Let's start from the central region because police in Esukuma Odobing Braka have arrested a man and his wife for allegedly attempting to bury their 2-year-old son alive. The couple say they were convinced by a fetish priestess that their 2-year-old child, who can neither walk nor talk, was a spirit child and had to be killed. Richard Kojonyako has more in the following report. I'm afraid we'll have to bring you that report a bit later from our Central Regional correspondent, Richard Kojonyako, on this particular story. We have to move away from here as we'll return a bit later on in this 60 Minutes bulletin. Well, we're actually joined by Richard Kojonyako, who has details of this story. Richard, good morning. Can you give us a background to this? I mean, we understand this was because a priestess had told them that the child was a spirit child and had to be killed. But why were they convinced?
Well, they believed in the story of the prophetess who said that, well, because the child can neither walk nor talk, they had to go and perform some rites. And I don't know whether she suggested to them that the rites amounted to burying the child alive. And so at midnight, the two, the man and then the wife, accompanied by the fetish priestess or the prophetess, went to the scene behind the compound, dug the pit, and then buried it. But when they were doing so, a tenant in their own neighborhood saw them, questioned them, and they told the tenant that they were performing a rite for the child because the child was not well. So the following morning, word went out that this incident had happened. And so the police had to be told about this. So they came. But when the police went there, they instructed the suspect to open the grave, and the body of the deceased of Yaduba, age 1.5, was found lying naked in the prone position in the grave. The body was exhumed, washed, and carefully inspected by the police. Blood was found oozing from the nostrils and the mouth. So they took photographs of the body together with the scene, and then the body has been conveyed and deposited at Our Lady of Grace Hospital mortuary at Bemane Sikuma for preservation and autopsy. So the police say they have made enquiries, and the enquiries revealed that suspect Paul Aduba, also known as Kujoko, is married to one Ata Adbraka, and they have 5 children, with the deceased Yawaduba being their 4th child. The deceased from the time of his birth was not able to walk. Due to such situation, the father suspects Paul Aduba consulted the prophetess Aman Kansa at Gomoeshim, who told the suspect that the baby is a spiritual child from a river, and if he doesn't return the baby back to the river gods, they will continue giving birth to such babies. So that, gingered them. They accompanied the prophetess, and then they went to bury the child. And so the police are on their hands for this prophetess. In the meantime, these two, the couple, are in the grips of the police. They are assisting them with the investigation while the police search for the prophetess that aided them to carry this dastardly act.
Richard, stay with me. I want us to go back to the story that you filed a bit earlier. I'll come back to you with more.
The couple, Paul Adoba and Mamiata, revealed their child was unable to walk nor talk. They consulted a fetish priestess who advised them to kill the baby because the baby was a spirit child. At midnight, the couple and the fetish priestess dug a pit and buried the 2-year-old alive. Abubakar Mohammed is a tenant of the couple. He suspected something was not right and so woke up to the surreptitious movement of the people at night. I saw them carrying the child to where the pit is being dug. It was around 12 midnight, and I heard someone was digging some pits. It was awkwardly strange, so I got up to close my window. I saw 2 women and a man. The man was digging while one woman was carrying a child. I was alone and a bit afraid, and so I couldn't step out. It was during that time that the man left the scene and came to the yard in our compound. It was my landlord, and so I asked him, "What on earth were you doing at this time behind the house?" He replied, he came to perform some rites. He further explained that his child was not well, and a fetish priestess said they needed to perform some rituals for the child, and that's what they are currently doing. So I left them. The chief of Breman Brakwa, Nana Kofi Hamid, says the community is extremely surprised by the acts of the couple. Even though they have left the two in the hands of the police, some rites ought to be performed. The couple and the priestess came to bury the child alive, and so those who suspected it reported it to the police. I was here in the evening when the relatives of the couple came that this was what has happened, and so they were begging for forgiveness. I said no, it's a huge crime that ought not to be entertained. I said this is never done. Even when day-old children die, they are not buried like that, let alone burying a child alive. What's so grievous is that they buried this child close to the mainstream we all depend on. The community is stunned by the act of the three and want the police to ensure that justice takes its course. Reporting for Joy News, Richard Kwejonyako, Breman Brakwa.
And our man who fought that story is still with me, Richard Kwejonyako. Let's talk about, is it a priestess or a prophetess?
Well, so the police have clarified that it is not a priestess, but a prophetess. And so the prophetess lives at Gomweshim. So when the child was unable to walk or talk and was almost 2 years old, they decided to consult her. And then that was the advice. The prophetess indicated that the child was a spirit child, a child of the river. And so if they do not return the child to where he came from, they would continue giving birth to the same children that can not walk or talk. And so that is why they yielded into the prophetess.
All right, so I suppose this is the first child because they already have 5, including the deceased will be 5. So this is the first child who couldn't walk or talk within 2 years.
Yes, we suspect so, because nothing is said about the earlier children that they have as having the same traits. And so it is this child that is what has landed them in this situation.
Okay, so as you report, the two, in terms of the parents, are in police custody, assisting them with investigations, but they are looking for this prophetess. Any particular description that the police has given?
No, they have not given any description to aid them in getting to the prophetess, but they have indicated where the prophetess is coming from, Gomweshim. And so it's a popular place that if any of them that live around Gomweshim, they will be able to identify the prophetess and help them to accost her as well.
All right, Richard Kwejonyako, we'll leave it here and allow you to gather more updates on this. We would let our viewers know when there are new development in this rather very disturbing story. Now, Mali has been suspended from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. That's the outcome of an extraordinary summit called by Chairman of ECOWAS, President Akufo-Addo, to deliberate on the political crisis in the country. Mali is facing another political crisis 9 months after the overthrow of President Ibrahim Abubakar Keita. The military junta that seized power again last week has also been directed to hand over power to an interim civilian administration within days. We've been joined by Dr. Chukwuemeka, the Executive Director of the West African Network for Peace Building, WANEP. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. What does this latest sanction really mean?
I think that's the only way that ECOWAS can send the riot act to the leadership of Mali, because we cannot continue in this direction. And what that does is to also tell Mali in no ambiguous terms that they are on their own. And if they do not conform to the ECOWAS set-down rules and procedures, especially relating to the democracy and good governance protocol, then they cannot continue to enjoy being part of the community.
ECOWAS has been in the thick of this crisis. What's your assessment of the way that they've handled this? There was an earlier meeting at Pediase and then just 9 months down the line, we see this?
I think that ECOWAS has been on top of it. I think that ECOWAS want to continue to insist on the implementation of the protocol on democracy and good governance to the letter. And I think that that's the only way ECOWAS can continue to enjoy relevance. And if you look at it, ECOWAS is also being supported by other intergovernmental organizations, including the African Union and the United Nations. What continues to be the challenge is some of the, if you like, some of the shadow actors, some of the external influence that continue to digress the efforts of ECOWAS in this direction. But I think that with the kind of support ECOWAS continue to receive from its other partners, and like I mentioned earlier on, African Union, who even was part of this meeting yesterday, and then the United Nations, I think that, and then again, if you look at it, ECOWAS is not just using just a hard approach. They are also using the mediator in the person of former President Goodluck Jonathan of Nigeria. So I think it's a two-pronged approach that ECOWAS is adopting, but all effort is geared towards ensuring that the protocols on democracy and good governance is implemented to the letter.
How will Mali feel this suspension? How is it going to play out in their country?
I think the first thing is that you can already be sure that African Union is going to endorse the position of ECOWAS. United Nations is going to endorse the position of ECOWAS. And that means that they will feel the heat, and the only way they can come back within the fold of ECOWAS community and also be accepted by other ECOWAS partners is that they do the needful. And the needful is to maintain the transition time frame, which is giving us 18 months, and that would be conducting election early February next year. And if they do not do that, because this later coup d'etat is going to derail the process, and that's what ECOWAS want to avoid. Using this as a benchmark, ECOWAS want to send strong signal to other members of the community that you cannot ascend to power through any other means other than democratic processes and elections.
As we've seen them do in the past, they can restore a bit of order, return to civilian rule, but how do we solve the coup conundrum, if you like?
I think that's very unfortunate, and I must say that at a period in time in the history of Mali, that the soldiers should be looking at how to address the issues of insurgency. They are more interested in political power. I think that's very unfortunate. But also to appreciate the fact that ECOWAS is putting all the options on the table. And then it's no longer that time when we don't have the ECOWAS standby force. The ECOWAS standby force is operational. And if was come to worst case scenario, ECOWAS will be able to deploy its standby force as one of its means of ensuring that there's stability in Mali. The effects of Mali instability on the Sahel region and the entire region is not something ECOWAS want to negotiate at all.
I want us to take a look at some timelines of major events from the overthrow of President Keita till date, and I'll come back to you, Dr. Eze. So this is some graphics on how far we have come. August 18, after months of anti-government protests, President Ibrahim Abubakar Keita and Prime Minister were detained by the military. August 19, military officers commit to restore stability and oversee a transitional period until elections are held within a reasonable time frame. August 20 and 21, opposition supporters mass up at Bamako Central Square to celebrate Keita's overthrow, hailed by their leaders as a victory of the Malian people. August 22, there was a key meeting, and I'll just go over that period again. The August 22 timeline and what happened. I'll come back to it. A key meeting between Mali school leaders and ECOWAS mediators seeking a return to civilian rule ends after just 20 minutes. Fast forward to August 23, military government wants a military-led transitional body to rule the country for 3 years and agrees to release Ibrahim Abubakar Keita. And then this was followed by the European Union suspending 2 training missions of Mali's army and police as part of an international effort to stabilize the country. That was back in August 26. August 27, Ibrahim Abubakar Keita is released. August 28, ECOWAS says the military must transfer power to a civilian-led transitional government immediately and hold elections within a year. In exchange, Mali's West African neighbors will commit to gradually lifting sanctions. In September last year, 7, the final statement of an ECOWAS summit in Niger's capital says that a civilian transitional president and prime minister must be appointed not later than September 15. And fast forward to 11 September, experts appointed by the military rulers propose a 2-year transitional government led by an interim president chosen by the army. And then September 13, military government pushes through a political charter to establish an 18-month transitional government with the appointment of a soldier or a civilian as interim president before elections are held. ECOWAS deadline passes without the regional mediators being able to persuade the coup makers of handing over power to a civilian government. That's just from September 13 and September 15. September 21, 2020, Mali's former defense minister is named as president of the country's new transition government, while Assimi Goita is appointed vice president. September 22, Goita asks for the lifting of ECOWAS economic sanctions, given that an interim president had been appointed. On May 25, 2021, in a statement read on a public television, Goita says that the presidents in Dor had been stripped of their duties. This is the president and they've been stripped of their duties for seeking to sabotage the transition, which would proceed as normally, and the scheduled elections will be held in 2021. Well, Mali courts appoint Assimi as interim president May 29, 2021. And here we are with this extraordinary meeting by ECOWAS and the sanction thereafter because of this latest development in Mali. Dr. Eze is still with me. We've talked about the coup, how to deal with the coup, but we also worry because we're part of ECOWAS, the excesses from Mali. Should we still be afraid of what we've always dreaded?
I think if most of us who are analysts are also worried because we have in the past touted West Africa as having gone over any form of coup d'etat in the sub-region. Include that we have started moving away from indefinite terms in office to now discussing how we can even have an additional protocol to the democracy and good governance protocol to contain term limits. But this is coming as a shock, and if you are aware of the dynamics of the sub-region, then you should be concerned, because once it starts in one country and we don't handle it effectively, then others begin to try to make reference to that and begin to copy and paste. And therefore, it is in that regard that I'm sure that ECOWAS is doing all within its powers to ensure that this is not allowed to stand under any guise.
So we know that France has over 5,000 troops in Mali. Now, President Macron is warning that they will withdraw troops from Mali if political instability there leads to a greater Islamist radicalization. What would that mean to the bloc?
Well, the question then to ask is, so what was the troops supposed to do? The troops were supposed to provide some stabilization, so they can't exit when things are going wrong. In any case, there has also been accusations about the role of France in Mali, and how that strengthens or weakens even the ECOWAS or African Union's position. So I think this is actually the time to rally around Mali and ensure that we have a smooth and seamless transition, prevail on the military through every means possible to ensure that they don't continue in power and that they don't see that as lucrative also, and that they should focus more on how to deal with insurgencies. While then we sit down to discuss in a very robust way, how do we begin to also address some of the structural issues that continue to make the citizens, even some of them preferring the military to the civilians. And that's because of lack of governance and other means to address some of their issues.
If the actions of the military, I mean, obviously illegal, why are we negotiating with this military leader in particular? Why aren't we punishing, but we keep sitting down and having a conversation?
Well, we must appreciate that, first of all, Mali is a sovereign state. Of course, ECOWAS is moving away from the principle of sovereignty to the principles of subsidiarity, which also means that we cannot be indifferent when something is happening in another country. But you need to create some level of balance in dealing with such issues, and that's what I'm sure that ECOWAS is doing. Mali is a signatory to the ECOWAS protocols. Unfortunately, ECOWAS is not inventing anything other than its protocol. So that's just what they're applying. And therefore, you can have a balanced approach, which includes arm twisting and also some level of dialogue. And that way, the country's stability is not put in jeopardy. Already, we have issues of insurgency in Mali and the entire Sahel region. So you don't want to approach it in such a way that the insurgents have their field day. So I'm sure that is the considerations that is being made. Otherwise, if ECOWAS feel that the junta is right, then they shouldn't even be talking about suspending them, as it were.
Finally, is there anything with this latest move that gives you some assurance that they would go back and do the right thing in Mali and there wouldn't be another coup? We won't be in this place again?
Well, I'm an optimist, but I also feel that the economic situation in Mali as of today is not such that they want to risk continued suspension from the community. And it has implication, not just for the community, but it has implication since it is going to be endorsed by African Union and United Nations. So it is their choice to make. If the citizens continue to suffer because of the political posturing of the military, then they will have to lose the confidence of the citizens, and that will also have implication in whatever governance architecture they want to create.
Dr. Chukwuemeka Eze, we'll leave it here. He's the executive director of ONEP, and we've been discussing the Mali issue, the latest being that ECOWAS has suspended Mali from the bloc. There will be elections still in February 2022, but within a matter of days, they are supposed to hand over to a civilian government. We'll see how that goes and keep you updated. Away from that, though, to the courts, father of one of the two boys denied admission by Achimota School over their refusal to cut their dreadlocks. Ras Aswad Nkrabia says he's confident the Human Rights Division of the Accra High Court will order the school to admit the Rastafarian students. The Human Rights Division of the courts will at 2 p.m. today deliver its judgment on the suit filed by the students to enforce their right to education and religious freedom. The Attorney General had argued in court without success that schools under the Ghana Education Service cannot be sued. The AG is also raising an objection to the capacity of the Rastafarian student to initiate this action. But ahead of the judgment, Ras Aswad Nkrabia is confident his children will attend Achimota School. We'll take you now live to the courts where my colleague Kweku Asante is there to report for us. Kweku, run us through this case from the very beginning.
Right, Mama V. So somewhere in March this year, Achimota School refused admission to these two Rastafarian students over their refusal to cut their dreadlocks. The school said it was against their rules and regulations to keep the dreadlocks on. And so the school came under some sort of criticism for that decision. The National Association of Graduate Teachers went to the aid of the school and supported the decision. So fast forward a few weeks after that, actually a few days after that, the Ghana Education Service ordered Achimota School to admit the two students, a decision Achimota School did not comply with. And so these students sued at the Accra High Court to enforce their human rights to education and also their rights to religion. And so today at 2 p.m. the court will be delivering its judgment on this issue. The students are hoping that they will be able to attend Achimota School. But there has been a couple of interlocutories or sort of in-between injunctions that have been sought by the students, urging the Achimota School to admit them. The court denied all two injunctions applications and also denied certain applications that were made by the Attorney General's Department, arguing that the school cannot be sued because they fell under the Ghana Education Service. This is also not a position that the court agreed with. And so some of these issues have all happened since the suits were filed in March, and today we are expecting judgment to be rendered by the Human Rights Division of the Accra High Court. Mama V.
That the parents have been talking. What have they been saying?
Right, so I've been speaking to parents of one of the children, Mr. Ras Aswad in Krabia, who is telling me that he's very confident that the school will have to admit their kids because of today's ruling. They're expecting a very favorable ruling from the court. They've been trying to tell me that the precedent that has been set in all other common law jurisdictions around the country, including South Africa, including Rwanda, is that the school would have to admit them. And so today they are very hopeful that Achimota School will admit the kids by virtue of the order of the High Court.
And Kweku, I want us to take a listen to the parent. I'll come back to you because I see that people are in court already. But first, let's listen to parents of one of the students.
But in terms of your expectations, in terms of the judgment that will be delivered, what are you expecting?
Well, I mean, my narrative have been clear from the beginning, that I'm expecting that the Constitution will rule and reign. That's what I'm expecting. So, by Constitution will rule and reign, what do you mean by that? I mean that the principles, the guidelines and the laws of the Constitution in terms of the rights of the child, you know, the rights for religion and so on will be upheld. Because it is clear in the Constitution, so that's what I'm looking forward for.
All the best. We'll see you after 2.
All right, give thanks.
So, Kweku Asante, this will be delivered at 2 p.m., but I see that they are already in courts. Is there a reason?
Right, Ramavi. So a number of people within the Rastafarian fraternity have today come to court to try and support their friends who are with this issue. I've seen a couple of them, and they are telling me that they are going to stay here till 2 p.m. when judgment will be rendered. And so they are very confident about the decision of the court going in their favor. That is what their prayers are, and they're going to stay here till 2 p.m. And that explains the number of Rastafarian people who are already here at the Human Rights Division of the Accra High Court.
All right. Kweku Asante, let's just, before you go, so this is the courts, deciding whether or not the students should be admitted, correct?
Right. So according to these students, the decision by Achimota School not to admit them infringes on their right to education as well as their right to express their religion by virtue of carrying the dreadlocks. And so this suit has traveled some time, and the judge actually at the first day of hearing actually promised an expedited hearing. And so within 3 months this application is coming to an end, and we are expecting that if the court grants the reliefs that these students are seeking, that Achimota School admits them, then they will go to Achimota and then they will be admitted. We don't know whether wherever this the pendulum swings, whether there will be an appeal application that will be filed in the superior courts. We don't know that as of yet, but it's expected that at least today the court will make a decision on whether or not the decision by Achimota School to refuse admission to these Rastafarian students by virtue of their dreadlocks infringe on the Constitution or any other laws not inconsistent with the Constitution, as these students have been arguing before the court over the last 2 months.
And Kweku, remind us of the ages defense again.
Amavi, come again.
I want to know the defense that the Attorney General put up.
Right, so the Attorney General when this suit was first argued that the schools and the Ghana Education Service, including Achimota School, cannot be sued because then these are not legal entities unto themselves. Because if you look at the suit and the suit that was filed, the school's board of governors is actually referenced in the suit. And so that was the first leg of the argument. That was not an argument the court found favoring, and so the court argued that Achimota schools should still file their response to the substantive suit. A few weeks later, the Attorney General himself, Mr. Godfrey Adame, actually made an argument in court that because these students have not been admitted as of yet, they do not have the local standing to be able to sue the school. That was also not an argument that the court accepted. And so the Attorney General's department has been trying to use the technicalities to be able to knock out this case, which the court has not accepted so far. But today, the court to look at the totality of the evidence that has been adduced by the Rastafarian students and their lawyers, as well as the Attorney General, sometimes represented by chief state attorneys, and also the Attorney General himself, about some of these arguments that have been made before the court, and we will see which the court finds favoring and where the pendulum will swing after 2 p.m. today.
Right, Kweku Asante reporting there live from the Human Rights Courts. As and when judgment is delivered, be sure you hear it here first. Well, Chelsea are champions. We've got sports coming up next.
Hi, welcome to Business. My name is Daryl Kwao. Each Ghanaian will be required to pay about 10,100 cedis if the country's debt of 304.6 billion cedis is shared among a population of 30 million. The country's debt has gone up by 13 billion cedis to hit 304.6 billion cedis in March this year. According to data from the Bank of Ghana, this is equivalent to 70.2% of gross domestic product, lower than the 76.1% of GDP registered in December 2020. The domestic debt went up to 163.6 billion cedis at the end of the first quarter of this year, but the external debt remained the same. Research fellow at the Institute of Fiscal Studies, Dr. Said Boachi, says the rising debt is not good for the economy.
There is the easy way that this government, when they were in the opposition, they were criticizing the previous government, and it is right. Use somebody's money to build your country. For now, you have access to the dollars. After all, it can help to stabilize your city, which is a political thing in this country. And you can also have money to continue to fund so many things you talk about, to police the electorate. That is the easy way. But in the long term, it's very dangerous for this country. So definitely the country does not have the priorities right.
Ghana's earnings from exports have hit levels similar to what was recorded just before COVID-19. New Bank of Ghana data shows that for the first 4 months of this year, Ghana secured $5.1 billion extra earnings. George Affe has more on this and other issues identified in the Bank of Ghana's economic and financial data.
The data showed that as at the end of April this year, earnings from cocoa stood at $1.8 billion, slightly higher than pre-pandemic levels. Gold also brought in $1.2 billion, while crude oil helped the country secure $1.1 billion. With the exception of cocoa, all the other exports slightly exceeded what we got last year. On the import side, the country spent $4.3 billion to finance non-oil needs as well as crude oil and petroleum products. The improved earnings can be attributed to a pickup in commodity prices on the global level and consumption improving slightly because of easing of COVID-19 restrictions. Another development that could be described as interesting is that non-oil imports have not gone beyond pre-pandemic levels. However, with crude oil prices going up, that could come with some mixed benefits. While it could be good news for us because of our exports, on the other hand, it could be bad for us when it comes to consumption of petroleum products because of its impact on fuel prices at the pumps. Based on the export and import numbers, the country recorded a trade balance of $756 million. These earnings could go a long way to stabilize the Ghana city, as the country's international reserves had set a record $11 billion as at the end of April this year. Again from the report, business and consumer confidence have improved strongly, while the data showed that indeed economic activities have picked up strongly, far higher than the pre-pandemic levels.
Meanwhile, the Bank of Ghana's updated composite index of economic activity recorded an annual growth of 26.8% in March this year, signifying increasing development in production, distribution and consumption of goods and services since the emergence of COVID-19. This is compared with 13.9% growth recorded in January 2021. Charles Nixon-Yeboah has that bit of the story.
Key drivers of economic activity during the period were port activity, construction, industrial consumption of electricity, domestic VAT, and to some extent passenger arrivals at the airport. According to a graphical data by the Bank of Ghana, port activity rose from about 62,000 in January to 69,000 in terms of container traffic in March this year. This shows that there had been more import and export, which is expected to bring in the much-needed tax revenue for the country to meet its 2021 revenue target. Port activity was relatively lower in the first quarter of last year, whereby COVID-19 pandemic had begun in some advanced economies. As a result, it dipped significantly during the epic period of COVID-19 in March, April, and May last year. Sales of cement, which is the key material in construction of houses and other buildings, also witnessed some significant growth. For passenger arrivals at the airport, the numbers have seen some encouragement, though it is yet to hit pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels. Overall, the economy appears to be gathering some momentum as there has been significant decline in coronavirus infections, which has culminated in further easing of restrictions.
And there's more news on our export earnings. If you go to our website, myjoyonline.com/business, you see that story right over there. That's it for business. The news continues after this break.
Well, thanks to Daryl Kwao for bringing us business on the desk. Indeed, that's it for what's on our desk this morning. We thank you for your company. Kindly log on to myjoyonline.com where we have plenty of news. But before we leave, though, we're ending with this video of Bichim United players arriving for their game in a Cadillac limousine against Elmina Sharks. The result, though, it was a 1-1 draw. Thanks for watching.